All right, so I would like to start with my album.
Yes.
Which I have picked J Dilla's Donuts. Anyone here was familiar with J Dilla before they listened to this album?
No.
I was. J Dilla has a name, that every person that has ever dedicated themselves to producing some sort of hip hop knows.
Yeah.
And worships and speaks well on. So I was familiar with the fame. I was familiar with some of the techniques, but not actually his music.
Yeah.
Before this.
Yeah. One thing I like to say, Dilla has kind of like the Seinfeld effect to him, which is where like at the time he was so revolutionary, but nowadays since everyone has copied his stuff, people now who go back to listen to Dilla, they're like, oh, I've heard this before. I know what this is. Just like how Seinfeld was crazy for its time.
Yeah, this isn't that revolutionary. I've seen this a million times
But
before.
Dilla was on this since 1988, essentially. So I would like to explain the story of this album and the story of Dilla before we go into like the musicality of it, because I want to contextualize it for you so you can understand it a little better.
Of course.
So J Dilla, or James Yancey, was born in Detroit. He was based in Detroit. From a young age, his family was very musical. His mom, the community likes to call his mother Ma Dukes as like a nickname, because she's basically like the GOAT mom of the hip hop community, as you'll see later why. And from a young age, he worked with this group called Slum Village. And Slum Village is it's a hip hop group. It's Dilla on the production, T3, and I forgot the last guy. But that group started in '88, and Dilla would produce with them. It's very interesting, actually. If you go back, you can find Slum Village tapes from that time, and it's like super lo-fi hip hop.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's just basically three dudes rapping, because Dilla actually did rap sometimes. It's like them rapping and Dilla making like a production off of like a super cheap machine and just a turntable. Yeah. And it gives me like a Daniel Johnston vibe, low key, where it's like cassette tapes and it's like lo-fi. Anyways, from there, Dilla will always work with Slum Village, was kind of like his main group that he always worked with. And through there, he would work with a lot of different hip hop groups, and he would work with people like the Far Side. He produced a couple songs, maybe 6 or 7 songs off of Lab Cabin California, their second album. He would work with De La Soul. The last album we did, Balloon Mind State. The next album they did, Stakes is High. He did one song on Stakes is High. The song Stakes is High, which is a banger, by the way. He worked with The Roots. Dynamite on Things Fall Apart?
Yeah.
That was his song. He worked with Tribe Called Quest on the album A Love Movement. He worked with Erykah Badu on that song Didn't You Know on Mama's Gun. And the list goes on. Dilla was known for being a very quiet guy. Like he was like he wasn't the guy who really cared about like fame or anything. He was really just in it for the music. So his mother would always joke that like Dilla would hop on like an album or like a news, like a magazine, and he'll do like an article on a magazine where they interview him, and then someone else would tell his mom, "Hey, your son was in this magazine," and she's like, "I didn't know." And then later I'll ask him, and he would be like, "Yeah, I was in that magazine." Like he was just very quiet at the clubs. He would just sit in the back and just enjoy the music.
What a guy.
There's a video out there. Maybe I'll show a little footage for the people at home where it's like Dilla in the studio with some other rappers and producers, and it's like Dilla. The video is called Dilla Speaking, and Dilla does not say a word. All he does is laugh and smile, and they're all just joking about Dilla and whatnot. And people would always joke. Actually, Kanye West once said about Dilla that when Kanye met Dilla in around the early 2000s, he was like, "This guy's like an NPC." Like he doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
But he was also thinking this NPC has the greatest drums in the game. Like just seeing this quiet dude.
Yeah.
So yeah, Dilla was always very dedicated. He's a lot like Madlib, where like all this guy does is make beats.
Yeah, he doesn't have like a gangster personality or a rapper personality.
It's actually funny because when he does rap, he's super gangster. His first album before the one we're talking about today, Donuts, is called Welcome to Detroit. He raps on it, and bro, it's like everyone joke like when he would rap, it's like an alter ego. It's like just straight up super gangster and super like Detroit as fuck. But
same thing with MC Ride. if you ever see him in interviews, super soft spoken, extremely soft spoken,
Very calm.
He's just talking like this, and like he's explaining his things very, very fluidly with a lot of big words, and coming from an artistic background. And then he gets on stage, he's a fucking caveman.
Yeah.
He's just screaming, "I got Nordic."
Yeah, he literally comes from the gates of hell.
Yeah.
I feel like there's quite a few artists like that are just it's just like you take out so much of the aggression out on stage or on the track that there's nothing left to give in an interview. An interview is just mellowed out, you know.
Oh, I see that. I see that with metal drummers. Metal drummers in interviews are zen as fuck. The guy who's the loudest of all the metal drummers is Lars. All right, that should say something.
Yeah.
But no, I digress. I just think it's like really interesting to point out the fact that like he's not a bombastic sort of personality.
Nah, I mean the biggest song, the biggest pop hit he did was "Didn't You Know" by Erykah Badu. But other than that, like he was always in the underground. He never was able to make a solo album yet because he really liked making other people's music, which I thought was so interesting because most of his career, other than like Slum Village and then Donuts, is him on other people's music. And people would always say his workflow was so fast. He would always ask them to come to Detroit because in his basement he's got his studio, and it's not even too much of a studio. It's just his turntable, his sampler, a synthesizer, and then imagine a studio like this big, but a little longer and a little bit more narrow. Just all the walls is just bookshelves full of records. In fact, Dilla would go to a record store and spend like $3,000 a day.
Oh my
Like he
God.
would go in digging non-stop for records, and he would get a whole crate. There's a video out there. I'll link it below, but it's like they interviewed the record store in Detroit that Dilla would go to all the time. They're interviewing the guy who owns it and talking about Dilla. And he's like, I just love Dilla because Dilla would just come in and just spend a ton of money.
Which half of the store are you buying today?
No, Dilla would always frequent the hip hop and R&B section, of course, and the soul section, right? And one time he was in like the rock section, and the record store owner's like, Dilla, what you doing over here? I don't see you over here often. He's like, man, sometimes you just get tired of it. like I need something else, you know?
That's
feel
fair.
him.
That's fair.
I also feel him on the working rather liking working on other people's music more. Especially because I personally am like shifting more towards that. I used to want to be like, oh, I'm gonna write my own albums, and now I like making sure that other people's like songs come together.
That was you notice it's a strong talent, and how much he can like morph into their sound and make something for them. Like for example, he makes a lot of hip hop, right?
Yeah.
The Erykah Badu song is not a hip hop song. It's like an R&B neo soul song, right? But he just picked a jazz fusion sample and then added bongos to it and all this percussion to it, and it's great.
Yeah, I definitely also kind of see that, seeing as I'm trying to sort of get into the whole producing world. It's just sometimes I kind of get him, what you were saying about like he never really made solo stuff. It's just like sometimes it just feels easier to just like I don't know, just kind of take somebody else's stuff and just try to, I guess, help them out with it.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, when you're the artist, it's a lot more. It feels like you're putting yourself on the line a lot more.
Yeah,
it's because it's your voice,
and you could tell with his personality being like an
introvert,
quiet guy, an
very introverted person,
that he would like to not do that, right?
Yeah, he doesn't really want to put.
Actually, you know, Bowie felt that a lot, and that's why Bowie has personas,
right?
Because he made that first album, which is not great, not good, because he's like, I must present myself, and he did that, and he's like, never again. He's like, myself as David Bowie, the person, not the artist, not interested enough to put on an album. So I gotta think so he started thinking like every single album, especially after Ziggy.
Right after that, he would do Space Oddity, right?
Yeah, right.
Which
after
is
that, he
Major
did
Tom.
Space Oddity.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, he's like, I'm always playing a character. When I go into a studio, I don't think, what would I want on this album? Be like, no, what would this fictional character, like Ziggy, what would Ziggy want on this album?
Yeah, you can see
Right.
that with Dilla too, because his first solo album, Welcome to Detroit, he's doing his rapper alter ego.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly. So
Yeah,
he immediately
yeah.
started doing that.
Yeah.
So
But-
it's a great way of going around the problem. Like, what do I want? Because what I want is I first have to answer who I am, which is the most impossible question ever. So it's like,
Yeah.
what would this fictional artist want? And it's the same thing with MF Doom.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think MF Doom, if he actually had to put himself out there and have his name, he would be okay with all of the goofy samples,
Yeah.
all of the skits.
It wouldn't also make sense because, like, the fact that he's playing this Doctor Doom character,
Yeah.
is where it all makes sense. He's playing the villain.
And it gives a lot more personality to some of the creative decisions that are out there. Because at the end of the day, it's like, if someone criticizes that, they're not scrutinizing him as a person. They're scrutinizing a fictional character that he made up. So it's like it could be whatever. It's like,
Yeah.
well, MF Doom could get mad.
MF
about
Doom
that,
was a
but-
bit more of a statement though, because he didn't like how like selfish hip hop had became, how it's like all ego and how much money you got, how many bitches you get, and all this.
Yeah, and
so
that's
how
why-
pretty you are and shit.
And
yeah.
J Dilla being like a quiet dude who's much more of a supporting role.
Yeah.
Super rare in hip hop.
And you can also see it in his music because
Yeah.
in his music, his beats were very like they were very mellow and chill at the time, especially for like the time when Far Side came out, right? With Lab Cab in California. All of his beats on that album, like I showed you guys, I had him also listen to Running by Far Side. It's a very beautiful. It's got a guitar sample. Who was it again? Stan Getz.
Stan Getz.
It's a Brazilian guitar sample.
And Luis something else. Yeah.
It's just pianos, this guitar. It's almost like a soul song with some hip hop verses. At this point of hip hop, you were seeing like boom bop hardcore.
Yeah.
You were seeing like really hard hitting drums, and you were seeing like hardcore vocals on it. Throughout most of hip hop, he kind of just did his own thing, and he just did it very well.
Yeah.
So I would like to explain to you. Now it's at the point of donuts, right? So in 2002, Dilla was touring in Europe. He comes back home, and he all of a sudden feels very sick, right? And so he's in Detroit. He goes to his parents' house, and he feels very sick. They take him to the hospital, and then at this point, he's diagnosed with like an incurable blood disease. I don't know the full name. It's like thrombocytic something. It's called TTP. And so this is a really rough disease, essentially. You can't cure it. And from then on, he still produces some more music, right? But his condition gets worse. And he starts going to the hospital a lot more, having long hospital stays. And it gets to the point where around 2005, he's pretty much always in the hospital. At that point in 2005 is when he starts making donuts. And basically he converted his hospital, like his little hospital suite or whatever they call it, into a production studio. Like it's like a pretty bare bones. All he has is SP303, which is like a pretty, at the time, it's like a small portable sampler. At the time, even with Dilla in 2005, it's kind of a piece of shit. Like
Yeah.
it was outdated, and then he had a portable turntable. And then he was so bedridden that he would ask his mom to go out with one of his like hometown friends to go get records for him so he can sample them, right? And his mom would do it for him, and his condition was very rough. His legs would swell, his fingers would swell so much his mom had to massage them. He would wake up in the middle of the night and he would ask his mom if she could like pick him up onto like a chair instead of the hospital bed so he can work on this album. And he would have to wear an air mask and all this stuff, like those whole air masks that covers your whole face with the little tube. His condition was getting really bad. So think about this. Did you guys know this when you listened to this album?
I knew it was his last one. I from what I gathered, I thought this man died of cancer.
I found out about it after
He did-
listening to the album.
I've known this album forever.
Yeah.
And I did not know that he made it in the hospital bed
I didn't
the
know that
entire
either.
time.
No, I knew that going into it. I knew that it was like Amadeus type.
Yeah, like a swan song type shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is honestly incredible because when you listen to the album,
It's joyful.
it's very soulful.
It's
It's
Yeah.
like it's the contrast of what he was going through dying while he was making this album. When you have songs like Two Can Win, which to me is like that was a song I also had you guys listen to. Only One Can Win by the Silvers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That song he flips to Two Can Win, which is one of the most happiest, soulful songs I've heard in hip hop.
Yeah.
I still felt like there was very much a tinge of bittersweetness throughout the whole thing.
There's a lot of crypticness to this album.
Yeah, I kind of took the crypticness as like a not necessarily unsettling, but sort of like a
Very introspective.
yeah,
I see
very
it.
introspective, very just kind of like taking a lot of the mixed emotions that he seemed to be feeling at the time, and even if he couldn't exactly make sense of it, just somehow put it into audio form into this album.
Yeah, I mean, his mother said that this last year of his life, he had gotten really spiritual, and I feel like you can hear that in this album. And he would, even though he was like, this reminds me of like Nietzsche a lot. Like even though he was dying, he would do anything to keep making songs on this album. So eventually, he's able to finish the album in February 7th on his birthday. The reason why the album has 31 songs is because he was 31 when he made it.
That's fucking nuts. And why is it
Wow.
called Donuts?
My whole thing about why it's called Donuts is I think it's like a metaphor because there's 31 songs on it and it's like each song is different. So it's like, I think, you know, you got your sparkling donuts, you got your chocolate donuts, you got all these flavors of donuts in this album.
It's a little treat.
It's a little treat. Also, apparently when people ask, like his friends after he passed away, why, they just say, my dog really liked donuts.
I thought it was just because the album's a loop.
That was what I was also going to say.
I mean,
It
I
loops
thought
like a
that
donut.
was very
Yeah.
I that's the first thing I thought of. It's like
Because the first song is Donuts
I-
Outro.
Yeah, I see.
And the
the
last
first song is called
Welcome to the Show.
Donuts Outro. I play it. It very much sounds like it's starting in the middle of something. So what I did is I immediately cued it at the end of the album.
Yeah,
So
and
when
you
I
know
would get
it's-
to the album, at the end of the album, I would hear.
I don't give a
'cause-
shit.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I kind of saw coming like. Yeah, it's Donuts Outro. The album is called Donuts. It's a bunch of loops. It's probably it's a kind of a concept album that just like got transitions all over it. It's probably gonna be a full loop, and it was, and it sounded really nice.
Yeah.
I'd also like to bring the interpretation that with what you're saying, and there's like songs like The Last Donut,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right, where it's like the records are these little round treats,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, and he just loves them. They're so sweet to him, you know.
Yeah.
And also the outro and Welcome to the Show with the spiritual thing is more of like, you know, he's going into the hospital. He knows he's not going to survive this. This is the outro. The
Yeah.
album is the outro, and then it's like Welcome to the Show is like he's going back home, you know,
Yeah.
which is like
The afterlife.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I want to also add something to the crypticness of this album. The last song, which is probably my favorite on the album, Welcome to the Show, the sample of it is a song called When I Die. And When I Die, it's like the verse of it is like, when I die, I'll be the man that you never thought I'd be. And that's the B is like, when you hear that song, you hear how it goes, B. That's
Yeah.
the B that you're hearing. So he just like makes that the whole song. And you can hear that little verse at the end. That thing to me was so beautiful because it's like, he's hearing this song and he's thinking about when I die
Yeah.
and how people will see him at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I think I saw it very bittersweet, the album.
Yeah.
I think it was actually around like sometime in the halfway point that I found out that this was like his last album before
He
his-
died 3 days after this album came out.
Yeah, I saw
Yeah.
that, and I think once I knew that, it sort of put things into perspective in terms of like, oh, okay, this is like this is not a very, it's not as happy as I was
You would
initially
think it is,
thinking it
'cause
was.
Hip hop is usually at this time period wasn't that dark, especially in the 2000s when you had Kanye being all soulful.
Yeah, but it
and
feels
Doom being all soulful.
very dark. Yeah,
It is in like in this introspective, melancholic way.
it's
right?
it also just feels very, very raw. The way that it's put together,
Yeah,
it's got a
absolutely.
very like sound collage.
Yeah.
It's Revolution 9, but a lot more refined and musical.
Yeah,
But it still has that aura of like kind of mystifying, You're not really sure what's going on.
I always, when I was a kid and I listened to this album, I always imagine it's like a TV at night.
Yeah.
And you're flipping through channels and you're getting all these different sounds.
Yeah. I 100% see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I also think it's incredible how well he's able to flip beats on an SP303. Like, I cannot believe this album was made on that. Like,
Yeah, no, I don't think anyone can. Just
like,
because
no one knows how he did it with that.
The thing that you're really impressing upon me, and listening to the album is that there's rhythmic changes to the songs. They're absolutely nuts, and there's like not only that, there's melodies that are going over rhythm that's much slower than how it was in an original sample.
Yeah.
And that just speaks volumes to the dedication, and the fact that these rhythms are slowed, sped up, with the same melody still over it, still fits in this song.
With no computer.
No computer,
He
by the
never
way.
used the computer ever in his
Off
entire
records,
career.
by the
Yeah,
way.
no, honestly,
Yeah.
I was under the impression until now that, I mean, I was like, oh yeah, this is most definitely done on like early Pro Tools and shit.
Yeah.
Like,
Because Pro Tools is from 89, I believe. Something like that.
90 something. But
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, no, I was like, oh yeah, he probably like had maybe like
Nope.
a laptop that he was like doing this shit on because of
Nope.
the sheer amount of samples on it.
Yeah.
But it's crazy that he just fucking did it on some shitty ass analog equipment.
Yeah. You know what he also never would do?
What?
And this is gonna go into the room. He never quantized his samples ever.
That is so based.
And you can
That
tell.
as a producer, that is so
you
based.
can tell because of the way his rhythm is, and this is what I was excited to talk about. His rhythm is so fucking good, and I have two drummers in here. He always wanted his rhythm to sound imperfect, which is why he never quantized them.
Perfect.
People,
Yeah.
Questlove, you know who Questlove is from The Roots?
Yeah.
He's the drummer of The Roots, right?
Yeah.
And he was very inspired by like Dilla's drums, and he would always say that like Dilla sounded drunk when he drums, and he always says like Dilla was able to simulate a real drummer with a sample, because a real drummer has little imperfections, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to be perfectly on beat with the beat per minutes and the quarter notes, and they're not going to do that.
Yeah.
So Questlove said he was at a Far Side show and he was listening to the song Bullshit, and he was like, is this a real fucking drummer? Then he goes in there and it's Dilla on the turntable. And he's like, how the beats, the way he hits the snare sounds like he just drank a bottle of moonshine. Like, how did he did he replicate this in a sample?
And he has the feeling of a drummer slowing down and speeding up.
Yeah.
That you would get from a classical R&B sort of setting. And that's why I actually disagree with the Seinfeld thing. Because, like, even now, listening to Donuts, I'm like, this is so ahead of, like, so many producers. Now, with Pro Tools, with their laptops, being able to fucking see the thing on the screen. Like, how... And no one's doing this thing of, like, the time shift? You kidding me,
that
bro?
little swing, that little bounce that he's able to add to it.
Like...
I think it also... I'm not going to lie to you. I think... this is something that I hear a lot as a producer, and I think this might be part of the reason why J Dilla never went onto Pro Tools. Apart from the fact that, like, you know, there's always the novelty that comes with analog gear.
Yeah.
It's that you'll hear a lot of people telling beginner producers, because if I pull up an equalizer right now behind me on my computer, what are you going to see? You're going to see a visual graph, you know, that shows you exactly where the peaks are, where the valleys are. It gives you everything visually. But of course, with analog technology, that shit did not exist at all, you know?
Nope, it's all ear.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I think that is a big part of what influenced the way music was made then and the way that it's made now. I feel like...
Yeah, you can tell.
I feel like it has so much more of an effect than we realize, because music editing has become such a weirdly visual art form, you know, especially like you said, you got the timeline right here. You can see the waves right there. You can
I'm looking at the waves as
yeah,
we're
we have-
talking.
he
right.
has a
You're
studio.
looking at the waves as we're talking. I find myself when I'm recording, I'll be like on my guitar, sitting on this very desk, looking at the screen and looking at the waves, and sometimes even looking to make sure that I'm hitting my strokes at the same time as the peaks of the drums are,
Right.
to make sure that I'm on time. Shit like that, you know. It's stuff that they didn't have at the time,
Yeah.
and I think it definitely changes
Oh.
the way you make music, because it's a lot about, they tell what I was getting onto was, they tell beginner producers, get an equalizer that doesn't show you the visuals, because what happens then is you start editing with your eyes and not your ears.
Yeah.
And that is a big factor in terms of...
It's a bad crutch. It's a bad habit. Yeah.
Exactly. It's a big factor in terms of a lot of things. We get everything so visual here that with a lot of things you end up just like... You make a change purely because you see it on the screen and you're like, it shouldn't be like that. Even if it sounds fine, even if it sounds good, even if maybe it sounds better, you know? It's this weird sort of OCD thing
You
that
want
just
to
kicks
train
in.
yourself to be a musician, not just
Exactly.
an engineer,
Yeah.
which is what Dilla was on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I 100% feel that. Dude was using his ears 100%. And especially with the whole, like, the beat was imperfect.
Yeah.
That kind of thing can only come out of pure listening.
Real quick, because I didn't even explain it. Or can you explain
Yeah.
what quantizing is for people who don't know?
Oh, right, yeah. So quantizing is basically, if you've got a drum track, you can make sure that every single beat is on time. And you can do this with live tracks. Obviously, it's very...
like a sample.
Right,
Yeah.
and it's very easy to do that with a drum machine, but guess what? Sometimes you're recording with a band and the drummer's just not exactly on time, so what do producers do? They quantize it. The good thing about this is it makes editing a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah, because then it's right on the line, and you can literally be like, I want to cut measure X to Y.
Yeah, you can
Yeah,
be
you
exact
can
with
literally,
it.
yeah, exactly. What that does is it makes sure that you can very easily, the way I like to call it is it makes everything impermanent, you know?
Yeah.
And that's something that I struggle with a lot as a producer. It's this this fear of permanence, of like, any change that I make can't be permanent, because if it is, then I'm going to be looking back at it like, fuck, I shouldn't have done that, you
Right,
know? And
yeah.
that's why, you know, I've been doing with you guys, with Carnival Barker and with Corazon, this thing of like, we're not using any reverb or delay pedals on the actual like recording. We're gonna do them post. We're gonna hook the
And
pedals.
we're gonna
in.
do it by ear.
Yeah, and
instead of the timing the thing.
Right, but
Yeah.
but the point being that like it's this fear of like, oh shit, I'm gonna record it and the reverb is accidentally gonna be too much or too little, or it's not gonna sound right, or the same thing with the delay. So this way I can change it around. And it's the same thing with quantization. Now that you've quantized it, everything is perfectly on the line. You can, like you said, cut out entire measures and it sounds perfect. It sounds as if nothing is amiss. And I
Yeah.
do agree that it is a bit of a crutch for
Yeah.
a lot of people.
What's crazy is he didn't quantize, and he would make songs where he would sample just like, it would be like a soul song with vocals. So it's like most of the song has a vocal of some sort. He would just sample the parts where there's no vocal, just instrumental, or maybe just like a background vocal, and then he'd snip them together with like the sampler in a way that there's no micro cuts you can possibly hear.
Yeah.
So which means his ear is fucking fantastic. Like the samples would go together like an axle loop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and it did say in the I guess introductory paragraph in the Apple Music
Yeah.
for the album, it said that he was a fantastic drummer in his own right. So I think he definitely played, right?
Yeah.
When I look in his studio, he doesn't have a drum set there. Maybe he did, but I never heard someone actually
but
say him
I've
playing the
seen
drums.
multiple people be like, "Oh, J Dilla was a good drummer," and that's usually the case with most producers. Is
Yeah.
that they have great sense of rhythm. Also, the micro cuts. I do want to point out something. It's going to make J Dilla seem a little less impressive.
What?
Micro cuts. What happens, especially if you have it analog, is that and you have like really small sample size, like maybe a sample that's
Like a second, essentially.
there's like less
Yeah.
than like half a second.
Yeah.
If you have a microcut of say maybe like 0.1 of a second, and then you have all of those lined up, it's just gonna go out of time really quick.
Yeah.
Like at the 2 minute mark, you're gonna see that it's like, oh, now it sounds like way off.
Yeah.
So
you can't have that.
A microcut would be like something you see when you have like a really large sample.
Yeah.
Like it's like I'm gonna sample these 4 bars, and then a 0.1 second extra, and the 4 bars are not gonna repeat more than 30 times in a single track unless you got a super long track. So you never see that really add up at the very end.
Yeah. I see. Yeah, no, it's definitely working with loops is its own, and samples is its own challenge.
Oh, it's fucking crazy.
And that's why I find these the like albums interesting, because it's a very different. It almost feels like a different job than to what I do, because so much of what I do is centered around mics and placement of mics and the drums and are they sounding fine, but for them, it's so much more about timing and about editing and about putting it together, like building it from scratch. It's like, for me, especially when it's a live band, it's almost just like I set it up, I test it, make sure it sounds fine, hit record, and then they do it. And I'm just kind of watching.
It's
you're
a completely
orchestrating
different mindset.
Right, it's a completely different mindset. For them, we're starting at the ground zero. I'm taking this, molding it, then grabbing another piece, molding it together, making sure that they sound good together. And it's like you're adding one by one.
The mold thing is definitely very interesting in the sampling game, especially when you're doing multiple samples a track. Yeah. Right? Because I've sat with producers that are sampling in real time, and they'll most times, if not always, they'll reach a point. It's like, damn, I want to use this sample, but there's this one note that if I remove it, it'll fuck with the rhythm, but if I keep it, I'll fuck with the harmony.
With the key.
And like, you can remove it and then move it, but then you need like a really fucking great ear for that if you're not quantizing at all.
Yeah.
And so there's definitely that added aspect of like, oh, I want to combine these two musical elements. How can I stretch this out?
Yeah.
How can I stretch out the harmony in this? And especially with hip hop being such a smooth genre, where you don't want like something like really disharmonious.
You don't want harshness.
No, but there's plenty of color. So there's quite a few notes. It's just at the border. Yeah. Of like, it's a colorful jazz tone or it's just a wrong note.
Yeah, Dilla was able to actually flip a beat in like 15 minutes, people would say.
That's like, fucking with
because most
vinyls.
With vinyls, with most of the songs on this album, most of the songs on the album don't actually have a lot of samples. It's like one sample per song, and then maybe he'll have like a vocal sample, like
oh, he has the air horn.
The air horn. He loves the fucking air horn so much.
the air horn.
Dulla, like.
Was the only thing I did not like about the album.
What?
There's only one time where I was like, okay, that's cool.
Okay, to me it works in hip hop because hip hop is low key a little cheeky. It's a little funny.
Well,
I think it's like a producer stamp. It's like put the fucking air horns on. It's a Dilla track. Dilla.
No, I do like that. Okay, while I don't agree with it musically, I do enjoy that it's on the album because it makes it feel like, oh, this isn't like a prepared thing. This is me flipping a DJ set.
He's having fun.
Yeah. And that's also something else about the one sample thing.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I feel like he restricted himself to one sample because he's like, I don't want this to sound like an overly polished thing. I want this to just be what would happen, like a DJ set to leave the guys with. You know?
All he really had to work with was the records that his mom would bring him. And those are most of the ones that ended up on the album. Yeah, in fact, this man was so prolific with making beats. Before he passed away, he gave Busta Rhymes like 300 beats. Just like, here, have fun with this.
Jesus
like
Christ.
A goddamn, like the cachet of beats that he had. In fact, he actually made a beat on his last day of life.
Oh my God.
He made a beat 2 hours before he passed away, which is incredible. You can actually find it on YouTube. I can link it.
I gotta listen. Do you want to listen to this?
Tomas, let's pause this. Let's pause this. I gotta show you this. It's very. We'll discuss it afterwards.
Ooh.
Okay.
It's kind of haunting yet triumphant at the same time.
Let's see.
Look up Dilla's last beat. Yeah, that one. The second one.
Second one.
Yep. All right, we're back. That shit was haunting.
Yes.
The fucking okay, it's a
Yes.
it's a sample of a Funkadelic song, "America We Eat It's Young," and it's literally just like there's that grasp for breath.
Yeah, that's the
sample.
most notable
Oh, yeah.
aspect
And
of
it sounds like someone was about to sing, right? And they go before they go ah or whatever, and it's just he sampled that right there.
That's also something I wanted to point out. It has a very sustained feeling. A very like
yeah, it doesn't.
we're about to shift. Nope. We're like it won't shift.
Yeah, that's probably how he was feeling before he was passing away.
Yeah.
Cause like grasping for breath and shit. And
Yeah.
at the same time, though, it does also kind of sound triumphant, cause it's got like
Yeah.
that pop to it. It's got
It
that.
sounds big.
It sounds big, yeah.
Yeah, and it's
Like he's going out with a bang.
but I cannot help but feel that it was it's dark. It came from a dark
it's
place.
haunting, man.
Especially compared to Donuts. Donuts comes from a, life is beautiful anyway, and then sort of place, and that is like, but dying is fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he passed away 2 hours after he made that.
Wow.
Yeah. But so let's talk about some of the meanings of some of these songs, because the way Dilla flips samples, they actually do have these cryptic messages to them. So my favorite from the album is the song "Stop," and it's like the fourth or fifth song into it. In the sample, it's a very beautiful song. The way like at the end of the song, it just has like this long vocal note and this like violin or something like, and but the message of the song is. So he has this record scratch onto it, right? And it's a sample from Jadakiss, and it's supposed to say it's that real, like that shit is that real, But he scratches it in such a way to where it sounds like is death real,
Oh wow.
and you hear is death real, and then it's the female sample saying, "You're gonna want me back in your arms one day,"
Yeah.
which is like I always felt like that's Dilla knowing that he's gonna be missed. And then the very most important is like right in the middle of the song, she goes, "Stop and think about what you do." And I always felt like that is a message to the audience that's Dilla talking to us. Because I feel like this song is about like him questioning mortality essentially. And like what he thinks about what he's going through right now.
Yeah.
He wants you to stop and think about what you do. You're going to miss him.
Yeah.
And is death real? And it's very subtle. It's something you got to like think about it, which is how it is. Cause he's not fucking talking in this album. He's not rapping. He's not singing in this album. It's all constructed from these songs,
Samples, yeah.
these samples. There's another one in Waves, the song Waves. It's a sample that says, "Johnny, don't do it." But he scratches in a way to where he says, it says, "Johnny, do it. Do it, Johnny, do it." Right? His brother is John Yancey. And his brother was also a producer and rapper like he was and singer. And I always felt like that song is him saying to his brother, "Do it. Like, do music, pursue music.
Yeah.
Like, don't stop. Johnny, do it." Right? Another one I love is "Don't Cry," which is such a fucking incredible song. I love "Don't Cry" because it's like the beginning of the song, he lets the beat ride. He just lets the sample ride. And it's just like, then he does that thing where he cuts like 10 little sections of the sample, and on the little sampler, he's just like playing it like a keyboard where it just has like that, it's shifting around, it's cutting around, but it's a beat that he makes off of like the beginning of a note.
Yeah.
And like the end of it. And like, it's such a beautiful fucking like, it's probably a really fun song to play on like a sampler or a MIDI or something. Cause it's just like, you fucking play into it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But that song was made for his mother when he was in the hospital. Or that's what Questlove says. A lot of these memes I'm getting from are from like Questlove, because he was like encyclopedic on the J Dilla lore. But
Yeah.
he made that song for his mother, "Don't Cry," because he's dying in the hospital and he wanted to cheer her up essentially. But any impressions you guys got?
Do you think there's any significance with the age of the years, right? 31, right?
Yeah.
And like the fact that they might be tied to certain years of his life.
What do you mean, like the?
Like, okay, like track number 5 would either be dedicated to 5 years ago, like when he was 26, or when he was 5 years old.
Yeah.
Do you ever think that there's a correlation?
I don't know if there was. I mean,
because now that you say that the age thing, and also like I do notice that the samples, like the words that the samples say, are very specific.
Yeah.
yes.
And of course, this is a super talented producer, right? And it's and he wants to really drive in the fact that like every sample talks to him.
It does.
And even
like,
when the song
I
is
saying,
about
like,
one thing,
yeah.
is like the words that stick out to him say something completely different.
He to the point where he scratches it to it, so it says that.
So yeah,
Yeah.
And the fact that like you're saying that these songs are singing about the exact opposites of what he's trying to express. Like only one can win.
Yeah.
He changed it to two can win.
Yeah.
The entire point of the song,
Is
one
that
can win.
Only one can win your love, essentially. Yeah.
But he's like, no,
two
two
can win.
people win in love.
Two people win.
Yeah. You know.
There's a lot of like little cheeky stuff. Like there's high, and then right afterwards there's
Yeah.
bye.
Yeah.
So,
I noticed that.
Do you think there's any significance with Lightworks and Airworks?
Okay, I was looking at the J Dilla subreddit because this is where you find a lot of lore. Some people will make up a lot of meanings. Like some people say that Lightworks is about him gasping for breath in the air mask, and I feel like sometimes it feels like too much of a stretch. Sometimes I don't want to like that's like speculation.
Oh man,
You know what I mean?
Oh.
That's also it might be that because that's like I just don't want it to be that because that's really dark. like damn, bro.
Of course.
Like damn.
Well, there's also
there is a scratch in Lightworks where she says light up the spliffs. She doesn't actually say light up the spliffs. It's a song from like it's supposed to be like a commercialized song.
Yeah.
And I forget what she says, but it's like she says light up the something, and then the second verse she says something with ifs. So he basically just scratches it into the middle and makes her say light up the spliffs, which is like cheeky.
Yeah.
But there's
yeah.
Go ahead.
I definitely do feel that sort of humor. I don't think any of the dark theories would make sense with the overall message of the album.
It is. It's more lighthearted than you think it is. I feel like.
Yeah, I think so too. Cause like,
Well, I think honestly, at the very least, I think he would have wanted. I get a feeling that that's what he would have wanted people to take away from it.
Yeah, I don't think he wanted like a doom and gloom album.
Not at all.
Yeah.
But I also can't help but feel like some of that doom and gloom just kind of inadvertently makes it into the album, and it's because it's just
for sure.
It's just such a dark.
It's hard to escape.
Yeah, it's
the sad
such a
part.
dark period in anybody's life. The way that he had to go out and. And
It's
it just
incredibly
inevitably,
tragic.
and it inevitably just subconsciously, I think he may have done some things that are very, I don't know, just kind of, very sad, very, him trying to sort of make sense of what is going on. And to me, it felt like, just thinking about the fact that this was so near to his death, and the fact that the album is is a perfect loop,
Yeah.
It almost feels like it's him saying he doesn't want it to end, or like he wants to like go back to the beginning and just maybe change some things. And it's
I sometimes think about it like he's saying that his life was so great, he'll do it again.
Yeah.
Because it's 31 years.
have you heard of the Nietzschean demon thought game?
The eternal recurrence of the same.
Yeah.
No.
Nietzsche presents this as
Nietzsche's a philosopher for you guys at home, an existential philosopher.
Oh yeah, Friedrich Nietzsche is an existential philosopher of Germany. I am not going to get to autobiography. Just search it up.
Yeah.
Because we will be here for 5 more hours.
That's a topic on its own, right?
Yeah. But Nietzsche, he wanted to present this idea of amor fati, right? And the idea is,
Which means love of fate.
It means love of fate in Latin, and pretty much imagine you wake up in the middle of the night, and there's a demon there, and the demon tells you is like, this life that you've lived and will continue to live, you'll actually, once you die, you'll just live it again forever. Now, do you curse the demon, or do you think them?
Yeah, you want to live the life that you would live over and over and over. You would live the same bad points, the same good points over and over again. You want to be happy of your life. You want to look back in your life and be like, I lived a fucking dope-ass life. And I feel like, this is speculation, honestly, because we don't know what was going through his head. But I feel like the idea that there's 31 songs to this album to 31 years of life. And
That's in a perfect loop.
It's in a perfect loop. I don't know if the years track, like the songs track to the years of his life.
And I also don't know how familiar J Dilla was with the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche.
I also don't think he was, but that's just my speculation because I fucking love this album.
But what's beautiful about art and what's beautiful about this speculation is that artists, especially famous artists, they know they know what they're doing. They know this speculation will happen, and they'll throw everything into an album.
Yeah.
Except things they definitely don't agree with, but they'll keep things open like that because it allows that interpretation. It invites that, you know?
Yeah, there's a little story I want to talk about one of the songs, because remember how I said he got very spiritual on his last year of life. The song High, if you guys remember, it's a song that opens with the vocal sample. I was standing at the bus stop and I heard a voice I haven't heard in a long time, and it what does it say?
It's like I haven't heard God in a long time. Or
Yeah.
something.
Oh no, I'll tell you the story. The story is crazy.
Oh.
And I just fell all apart inside because I haven't heard that voice in such a long time. It's like this sleek, sexy female voice, right? And it just does like the loop, and it's a good track. So apparently, Ma Dukes, his mother, he would hallucinate throughout the day and have conversations with himself, with someone that he was seeing throughout the day. One time, she asked him, who are you talking to? And he told her, Old Dirty Bastard. Now, at this point, Old Dirty Bastard had already passed away for like around 2 years before this, right? And she said, "Oh, what is Old Dirty Bastard telling you?" And he said, "Don't get on the red bus. Get on the white bus. The red bus looks fun, but you don't want to go there. You want to get on the red bus. The white bus." And that's what ODB told him. So I've always thought that High is J Dilla's POV from this hallucination that he's at a bus stop. He hears a voice he hasn't heard in a long time because Old Dirty Bastard had already passed away. And he fell all apart inside.
What kind of does this blood disease cause hallucinations like that? Like
apparently it did, and apparently he would talk to people. That's what his mother said.
Wow.
That is fucking nuts.
That is nuts.
That is nuts. I'd like to mention that on the internet when I looked it up, it said he died of lupus.
Yeah, he also had lupus at the same time.
Oh,
it was
Jesus.
both. Yeah.
Yeah, it usually like
He ended up getting like kidney failure,
Oh.
a bunch of stuff, man. It was brutal. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Damn.
But yeah, there's fucking shit. It's a good ass album.
It is a good ass album, and I'm glad that this man, at the end of his life, he's like, what do I want to do?
Make music.
I want to make not just any music. I want to make music that doesn't glorify me. It's just, it's a vibe. It's a I can still present a good time to people past my mortality.
But at
know?
the same time, it is like Questlove asked him a little bit like a month before he passed away, like, what is this album about? And Dilla told him it's a message.
Yeah, I think more than anything, it's a way for him to just kind of get a lot of his thoughts out into the world without, like you said, without making it about him, you know?
Yeah.
It's very selfless, but also it's him at the same time.
He
was a selfless person.
And I think, I think it's something that I think both you and I probably experienced before. One of the greatest things about being able to work on somebody else's music is that you get to be a part of something that says exactly what you're thinking, but through somebody else's voice. So it takes the you out of the equation. It makes it egoless in a way. You know, it's like this may be something that I could have even written myself, but it's not my voice. I'm not the one that has to be saying it. And I think he wanted to remain in that, which is why it's all samples.
All the messages are samples.
It's all other people saying
and they're
the
all
things.
buried into who he's sampling and what they're saying and how he scratches them.
It's all other people saying the things that he feels.
Yeah. There's also this feeling, this thing I just love about hip hop in general, where hip hop feels like you're bringing the dead back to life. it's a huge like idea of cultural appreciation. Like,
Oh, yeah.
because a lot of hip hop is sampling older African American music, like soul, a lot of funk, and you're giving them a new light. You're turning them around the way Dilla would flip a beat. Like if you heard that Silver song, most of the song is like the verse is kind of alright. It's like it's great, but that fucking chorus when only like that shit, he just takes that and he makes that a part of the rhythm. He takes that little long vocal sample, the which she's like screeching at the top of her lungs, and stretches it through the way he fucking takes it. It's so gorgeous.
Yeah.
I love it. But like it's almost like it has this feeling where it's like the ghosts are speaking to you. Like the past is speaking to you to the present, because he's taking these old musicians and having them say a message.
Yeah, I think it definitely speaks to me a lot, because it's I mean, this is something that we're actually trying to get on our next album, with Lewis and Michael. Just kind of I mean, I guess I'll try not to spoil too much, but it's this idea of having somebody else say the things that you're feeling, I think has always spoken to me in some sort of way. And I think it speaks to a lot of people, and that's why we, enjoy music and whatnot. But it's I think it came out a lot in, for example, the first time that I sort of dabbled in that was when we did the interviews for our first album. And that was the first sort of way. It's kind of like sampling, but not really, because you're having somebody else.
It's a planned sample.
It's a planned sample. You ask somebody questions that are related to the messages of the album, and you see what they say. But guess what? Sometimes I would take things completely out of context. I would do similar things of like, somebody could be talking about something completely different, but I take that, combine it with something that somebody else said, and then it almost sounds like a conversation, even though the two things that they were talking about were completely different. It turns it into this specific meaning. And I think just seeing this this level of sampling, it really speaks to me, because I
knew you would fuck with this album.
Yeah, no, I really did. And it I think it opened my mind a lot to some of the possibilities, because I feel like that's something that is not explored a lot in rock, alternative pop music, and especially when you're trying to make something that's a little more artistic. I feel like that's such an unexplored avenue that
rock specifically.
That could yield so many things, and I feel like so many people in the rock community might be a little closed off to that, because it's not necessarily, that's a bad way to make art. It's just that that's their territory. That's hip hop. We don't want to mess with that. I don't know too much about it. I don't know if I can pull it off like they can, type deal. But it's a thing of like, fuck it. What if we try to do it anyway? Especially, I feel like, I always wonder why don't I see a lot of people trying to do, like, a lot of people, you hear so many people hail bands like Pink Floyd or artists like David Bowie in a way of like, oh yeah, they're the pinnacle of rock music because they did something very artistic. And it makes you question, why don't a lot of people go and make these more artistic albums rather than trying to stick to like a, standard rock album formula?
Why don't they think outside the box a little bit.
Right. And I think it's because people listen to Bowie, they listen to Pink Floyd, they listen to King Crimson, and they think they did it all. Or the Beatles, they're like, they did it all, and there's nothing more. There's no, they can't. They feel like they maybe.
I have to disagree with you, hard.
Yeah.
Just
what do you think?
Actually, no. Steve Howe said the best, right? Because he was being interviewed in the '80s with like, why don't we see more artistic, more progressive-minded music in rock music and pop? And he's like, people stopped doing the drugs. No one takes acid and sits there and listens to a 30-minute song anymore. You
So-
know, people now take coke and turn on the radio.
Yes. So this is something I wanted to say. Rock to me feels very personal. It's very much like my emotions that I'm expressing as an artist.
Yeah.
You can feel it in my guitar. You can feel it in my voice. You can feel it in this piano. Hip hop feel like it's more like our experience.
Yeah.
It's us. It's a culture.
It's me and my crew.
It's me and my crew.
Me and my hometown.
Me and my hometown. Like would Wu-Tang be Wu-Tang if they weren't from the Bronx?
Yeah, but you know, I also kind of get that. I feel like that's what makes Dark Side of the Moon such a different album, because it feels so us. It feels so this is a universal experience, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's what made it such a different album, and has always made it such a different album of what we see in rock, because you're right. A lot of rock, especially what we do, ends up being so much like my experience. Here you go, here it is, and I hope you can relate to it.
Yeah.
But maybe there's something about just like taking this approach of us.
Here's where I think it originates from.
Yeah.
I think because hip hop is very rhythm based, I feel like rhythm is something it's almost like a group thing. Because if you look at the
Yeah,
way
you got to support it.
you gotta support, like
Yeah,
if you look at like
support
Afrobeat's like all these instruments coming together and making this wall of rhythm. It has like, I always felt like this vibe from like Afrobeat that like, imagine like you're in like a village and like we got one guy clapping his hand like this. You got one guy slapping his knees like this. You got one guy on the little drum like this.
I see this a lot in
Yeah,
salsa. Like
yeah,
salsa
similar, yeah.
Well, it's the drummer, the pianist, and the fucking dude with the scrape with it.
Yeah, the little ring ding. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're all just as important. No one there is the star.
No,
you know?
what's important is the rhythm that they're constructing together.
The room is the star.
Yeah, the room is the star. And,
Yeah.
and you'll feel that in hip hop because like hip hop groups show this a lot, where they're throwing these ad libs together. They're all combining on a verse, and the fucking like the hooks are always like them like
It's not
yelling and
lead
shit.
vocalist. It's back and forth.
It's back and forth.
It's
you're passing it. You're
response,
calling
yeah.
response, which is what rhythm does. Which I think that's like the basis of the difference between those two genres. Essentially, it's like it's a cultural thing.
No, I 100% see that.
I would like to point out, right, the thing you said about J Dilla that was very interesting, where he's like, hip hop is about bringing the dead back to life.
Yeah.
But J Dilla must have been the first of his generation to be like, I'll become the dead.
Yeah.
Therefore, I can plan out how my ghost is gonna be like.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what
And
I
you
feel
know,
like.
he actually does it on the album. There's
Yeah.
a song called "One for Ghost." That song is for Ghostface Killer on the God, I forgot the name of the Fish Scale, on the album Fish Scale.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, here's some more lore for you guys. After he Donuts was signed on the Stones Throwing Records, which is the same record label that did MF Doom, right? So after he passed away, MF Doom had a dream about J Dilla, and in this dream, J Dilla visits him, and he basically says, "We should collab," and that was the dream. And then MF Doom says to Dilla, I've done 3 songs off of Donuts," and then MF Doom wakes up, and he hasn't actually done the 3 songs yet, but then he goes on and he raps on 3 beats from Donuts. It was a song called Mash's Revenge, which is Mash from Donuts.
No.
And which is a banger. If you're at home, listen to Mash's Revenge. That shit is a banger. Then he does Sniper's Elite, which is anti-American graffiti from Donuts. Also very good. And then he does Lightworks on Born Like This.
That's where it's from,
Lightworks.
motherfucker.
Lightworks from Born
my
Like This.
God.
I'm willing to say that Born Like This is very influenced from J Dilla's passing. But yeah, so he went on. He he prophesized his future from the fucking dream, and he had to like pay respects.
That's
essentially,
fucking nuts.
yeah.
I might almost stop my album.
I don't know, man. This is legendary.
Damn.
But yeah, R.I.P J Dilla.
R.I.P.
He was the fucking GOAT. Top 4 producers, easy for his time. Probably the best. Influenced so many people.
Fantastic album.
Will never be forgotten, and therefore he will never truly die.